What's happening, wanderers? Welcome to Ollantaytambo in Peru. Let's go. Welcome to the Sacred Valley Adventures, where my wife Vanessa and I travel throughout the magical country of Peru, deep into the Andes Mountains to discover the real beauty of Peru. Vámonos! So as every great adventure in Peru starts, we are heading in a colectivo, which is like a public shuttle bus, to the town of Ollantaytambo. And if you're watching the Sacred Valley Adventures, you might be seeing a bit of theme here, because we take a lot of colectivos to get to these beautiful places. Anyways, we were quite parched and wanted to try an authentic Peruvian drink to start our day in Ollantaytambo. Hi everybody, this is my first time drinking chicha morada, which is a purple corn beverage, very classic Peruvian cocktail. Well, not cocktail, there's no alcohol in it. Been here for over 2 or 3 weeks. It was the first time having it. Better late than never, though. Ooh, it's really good. It's sweet and very refreshing, but not too sweet. It doesn't taste like corn at all. That's freaking you out, but definitely would recommend it. It's very refreshing. Yeah, it's good. So now that we're all hydrated on purple corn beverages, it's time to go to the main attraction in Ollantaytambo, which is a scenic little walk and an interesting little cafe that I might have seen before. Is that Quechuan for Starbucks? I have no idea. But before we enter Ollantaytambo ruins, here is one site that you must take note of. Behind me on the mountain, we actually see something that's really cool, which is where the Incans, they used to climb up there to store their food, to preserve it for long periods of time. You can actually hike to those areas if you'd like, over there. And there's nice little terraces as well, very pretty and scenic, but just really cool to know that the Incans chose that spot because it was a bit more shaded from the sun and more of a colder temperature for the town. So that's where they could store their food for longer periods of time in case there was things like drought or natural disasters that prevented them from being able to harvest crops regularly. So keep your eye out for that as well. And as we can see, these terraces that Vanessa and I are currently climbing up are no joke. Each one is like, let me get really close to one so I can show you. Taller than me. It's like maybe 6.5, almost 7 feet tall. Crazy stuff. And these were originally built as a religious site, but they were later used as a bit of a fortress and for military protection, which we'll talk about more later as we go throughout these ruins. These stones are so massive, everybody. Each one must be tens of tons. So beautiful and so sophisticated how they built these. The Ollantaytambo ruins head deeper into the Andes Mountains, giving some unbelievable views of the valley, but ultimately this led us to one of the most notable sites in the entire ruins. So it looks like over here used to be the Templo del Sol, or the Temple of the Sun. It's hard for me to make out now exactly where it is. Probably be good to have a guide for that. I'm sure this used to be the wall bordering it. Normally the Temple of the Sun is more of a circular shape, which I've noticed in the Pisac ruins. But really cool to see that important structure, which, in case you didn't know, was used for offerings to the sun, and normally to tell a bit of the time through windows to tell what time of year it is and the solstices and all the interesting sort of things. So here we are inside of the Zona Militar in Ollantaytambo. And as you might have been able to deduce, like a Spanish expert like myself, we're talking about the military zone of the ruins of Ollantaytambo, because this is ultimately a fortress that's perched up on a hill. And it was built roughly around in the 1500s. Before it was used for religious reasons, but when the Spanish were starting to come, and there was more of a worry and more of a need for a military defense or otherwise from other Incan civilizations, something like that. Anyway, they used to come up here and it was used to defend. And that's why the terraces are so tall and you have to climb up them very highly, because they're also kind of built sort of to make a temple, or a stronghold I should say, on top of this hill in Ollantaytambo. And the interesting thing was, when the Spanish were invading and trying to ultimately take over the Incan civilization, they fought back, but they had to retreat as they went. And Ollantaytambo was the last place that they retreated to, that is the Incans. And they actually successfully fought back the Spanish here from the conquistador Francisco Pizarro. Maybe you've heard of him from some Spanish books or history books or something like that. Anyway, so the stronghold was actually very useful because they were able to fight them back, although it was only for a moment because the Spanish came back with more numbers, and then the Inca, at that time, I don't know the name of him, he fled to more of the Amazon jungle area. So anyway, it's just really cool historical context of not only how it was a fortress, how it was built to be a fortress, but also how it was successful when the Incans were obviously the underdogs against the Spanish. Cool stuff, right? And down below, which you might have saw if you were entering Ollantaytambo, there's actually a little market just right outside the entrance. So if you want to get some souvenirs, just check out some locally made Andean or Incan, Peruvian, whatever you want to call it, goods. Check it out before or after visiting the Ollantaytambo ruins. It also adds another scenic site, in addition to the valley and the town and the ruins right behind me. Another really cool feature about the Ollantaytambo ruins is we just explored the main sort of fortress area with the big terraces that walked past, the Templo del Sol, the Zona Militar, how do you say, military zone. And we're not done yet. These are massive, so there's a nice little walking trail which connects on the side of the cliff that part of the ruins, and with a nice fun walk looping around to hopefully another cool area to explore. Let's check it out. So another really cool thing is that these huge walls, which of course are built to maintain the terraces, which are above, they're used as walls, but they're also used as terraces to grow plants. And today, especially this terrace and the one behind it, are still growing crops. So, even though it's historical, I'm sure it's still used for some modern day events. Pretty cool.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. So you guys caught me deep in, I even fooled Vanessa on that one. Caught you guys deep in thought, thinking about all the history and everything. So I just want to kind of go over some main points again, in case you're interested. And what was the purpose of Ollantaytambo? So we know it was a fortress. How did it come to be? So the Incans actually conquered the town of Ollantaytambo in the mid-15th century, so the mid-1400s or so, and then they rebuilt it to have their own significance for spiritual reasons, for military, being the fortress that it was, and also being a place that the nobility could reside. So what happened was, when the Spanish came over in the 1500s and were trying to conquer the Incans, Inca Manco, he made this his place, because what happened is the Spanish came to Cusco, which is coincidentally where we're staying, and they conquered them at the old ruins in Cusco, which in case you don't know was Sacsayhuaman. We visited that as well. Check out that video if you haven't as well. The Inca Manco was forced to retreat from Sacsayhuaman, Cusco, to come to Ollantaytambo, and then the history that we went over happened. He defended it valiantly from the Spanish by flooding the valley, and then he fled as soon as that happened because he knew he won the battle but he didn't win the war. So just other cool kind of dates and historical information to keep in mind when observing this beautiful, magnificent place that has lots of purpose besides just structure. So Vanessa and I think that this portion of the ruins we're exploring right now probably was a bathhouse, and I think there is some information online to confirm or deny that. So first of all, there's a stream rushing right by, and there's a little bit of a structure right there that looks like where water would come cascading down, where they'd probably collect it and use it for bathing. So, or it was just a cool house where they had some water supply. Either way, pretty cool to walk around this little part of the ruins here. We're here at the Templo del Agua at Ollantaytambo, which is one of the other temples. We saw the Templo del Sol and now the Templo del Agua. And it is appropriately named because the water is coming down from the stream here. We get a nice scenic sound. Definitely gotta check out these two temples at Ollantaytambo, everybody. So while you digest all that information we gathered from looking at the Ollantaytambo ruins, I'm going to be digesting some delicious Peruvian food, which we found at this cafe, along with some llama facts. The great thing is there's lots of different restaurants with vegan options right outside of the Ollantaytambo ruins. We went to a restaurant called Ascada, I believe it's called. We're getting some Peruvian food, which is vegan of course. Really excited to dig in. We ate some delicious traditional dishes, including ceviche, which is the national dish, and taku taku, which is very delicious, and hearty, which is perfect to fuel up for what would be an arduous climb ahead of us. Let's do the climb. All right, everybody. So do you remember at the Ollantaytambo ruins earlier? That is right there. Yeah, you recognize it, looking gorgeous as hell with the terraces. Because I catch my breath here. Do you remember on the opposite mountain, which You may notice I'm opposite the ruins again. I pointed out to these old historical looking structures and I said that's where the food storage took place. Anyway, I'm hiking up the side of the mountain here and it's really steep, but really freaking beautiful and fun to get really up close and personal to those. They're called Pinkuylluna. Hold on, let me double check that pronunciation there. Pinkuylluna. Pinkuylluna. Hopefully I got that right. I don't speak Quechuan and my Spanish is abysmal, as we all know. Anyway, gonna check them out nice up close and personal. The hike is definitely intense up this hill. These little railings to grab onto, but really freaking gorgeous. I want to show you what it looks like up close and maybe some other views of the sacred valley around us. So we finally made it to Pinkuylluna. And look at these views, everybody. Holy crap. Those terraces, which are massive, look tiny from here. The whole town of Ollantaytambo, and massive mountains behind us. But let's get into the thick of things and see how historic these little ruins actually are. So we have made it to the Pinkuylluna. This is where the Incan people used to take up their food to store it for the long term because there were some natural disasters in the Andes. We're talking about earthquakes, droughts, probably no floods because they're pretty high elevation, but maybe if there was a high rain and it went down the valley. So they couldn't always depend on their farming and harvest for every year. So they were very smart, they were very ahead of the time, so they stored their food. And they decided to store their food up here in the mountains because it actually preserved or provided a great place to preserve the food because of the shade from the structure and being higher up elevation. It was able to last longer. So they would store things like corn, other crops. That's actually how chicha, which is the famous fermented corn drink, was discovered because they were preserving some corn and it was just a little bit past the preservation date. And they tried it and like, yo, it's actually pretty good. And they turned it into a drink and a food. Really interesting stuff. Anyway, leaves a little bit to be desired for imagination because I don't exactly see the methods of how they stored the foods. I'm sure they put them in like vats or some kind of pot to store it over the long term, but this is where they did it. And there's like 4 different layers you can walk around and check out with some amazing views as well. So another really cool Incan ruin with a different purpose than other stuff we've explored so far in Ollantaytambo. So that's all for Ollantaytambo. It was a great adventure, but our next episode takes us even deeper into the Andes Mountains, into some of the most insane and beautiful scenery we've seen in Peru and probably in our lives. It truly felt like we were visiting another planet here on Pinkuylluna, aka Rainbow Mountain. Look how insane those are. How did that even happen?